Of course you know what I'm saying because I just said it. Okay, anyways. Hey, welcome to my video. If you're from my Instagram, I love you, and if you're not from my Instagram, love you all the same. Welcome to Monthly Book Club, which, as you know, is a series here on my channel where I tell you exactly what I read each month and exactly what I rated. Now, a couple of disclaimers as always before we begin. Number one, I'm not here to bash any books or authors. I'm not here to be rude at all. I'm just here to tell you my honest opinion, but I believe that you can do that without being snarky and mean, so that's what I'm gonna do. And I would ask you if you're gonna comment about any of the books that you read as well, to do the same. Then as well, number two, if I ever rate a book low, I don't want that to be the influence or the deciding factor on whether or not you're personally gonna read that book if you wanted to. Honestly, reading is just so subjective, and the reason that I might hate a book might actually be the reason that you love it, and vice versa, and obviously both of those opinions are valid. And then a last disclaimer, I'm gonna pop up some graphics here on the screen for you right now, just so that you sort of have a better understanding as to why I rate things the way that I do. Obviously, this is subject to change and vibes and my mood and stuff like that, but if that's the case, I always let you know. But yeah, with that being said, if you're interested in what I read this month, then please keep watching. So to kick off the month, we're gonna start with Powerless and Reckless, which is a Powerless trilogy. So first of all, tropes. So this is a high fantasy young adult novel, and I'm gonna be giving you a small synopsis of both books right now, but I am going to be rating them separately. The reason that I do this is because I don't want to give away too much of a synopsis for book 2, because I think that would spoil the experience if you're planning on reading it. So let's get into it, shall we? So first of all, if I pronounce any of the names wrong, which I tend to do a lot when reading fantasy novels, I'm sorry, but also I pronounce it how I pronounce it, okay? So this book is about the kingdom of Heeeyyy, and there are two types of people here, ordinaries and elites. The elites possess special abilities and the ordinaries hold no power. So all of a sudden, the king of Heeeyyy decides to banish the ordinaries in order to preserve the elites, which means that being an ordinary and powerless in this world is illegal. And that's what Peyton is, okay? So Peyton is actually powerless, but her dad has been teaching her how to sort of fake having a power and ability since she was very young so that she could survive in this world, and that's exactly what she has been doing. She lives in the slums of Heeeyyy and doesn't exactly have, you know, a cushy life, but one day she saves one of the princes of Heeeyyy without knowing that he was the prince, and finds herself being thrown in the purging trials, which apparently is an honor. It's sort of like Hunger Game-esque. Now, of course, Peyton is scared to death because if the trials don't kill her, then the prince, who she's, by the way, developing certain feelings for, will certainly kill her once he finds out that she's an ordinary. So that's sort of the premise, and now let's get on with the rating. So for me, this was a 4-star read, and on the chili pepper scale, it has 0 because this is, once again, a young adult read, which, like I said before, it's fine for me. Not every book that I read has to have smut, but it does have to have a good storyline, and this certainly was one. So the concept is indeed very cool. It is reminiscent of the Hunger Games, and I used to love the Hunger Games, so, you know, books like this are right up my alley. I also do love the chemistry between the prince, Kai, and Peyton, and so because of the chemistry and because of the good storytelling, this for me was definitely a page turner. And another reason is because there were multiple cool twists in this book. So there was one at like 55%, there was one at, I believe, 90%, and there were multiple cool ones around the end as well. And that's why I decided that I wanted to read book 2, which was Reckless. Now, Reckless, again, high dystopian young adult fantasy. Now, when it comes to rating Reckless, I sort of did compare it to Powerless because it is a series, so of course naturally you're gonna do that a little bit, or at least I did. But for me, Reckless was a 3-star read, and again, 0 chili peppers. Now, I've seen some discourse online as to whether a 3-star rating is bad or good, and I guess it just depends on the person. So for me personally, a 3-star rating is a good, solid book, and I don't think it's like a drag or a read or an insult by any means. And the only reason that I did rate this one lower is because I feel like it was too slow and not enough burn, you know? And I actually really love a good slow burn, but there has to be payoff to that. And in this book, in my opinion, there really wasn't enough payoff. And now obviously high fantasy novels are gonna be long, and I don't mind that as as long as they grab me, grip me, keep my entertainment going. But this one was not as entertaining as book number 1, in my personal opinion. It gets really, really good at around 80% though, and there is a huge plot twist at the end, and that's probably mostly gonna be the only reason why I am gonna read book 3 once it comes out. So I am gonna be finishing this trilogy. I do normally like to finish a series of books unless it gets unbearable, and like I said, this one is not unbearable at all. I just think book 2 was just not my favorite. But I will be reading book 3 and I will be letting you know, maybe it picks back up again. Okay, so now on to the next. Next I read Bright Lights and Summer Nights. So this is the last, third, final book in this trilogy, but let's start with the tropes. So this is an age gap, sports romance, billionaire boyfriend, and it's about Emma and Preston. So Emma comes to the Hamptons to sort out her like quarter life crisis, I guess, and just to relax, but she ends up sneaking into a private party, an engagement party for Preston's sister. So Preston is a superstar quarterback, and he ends up asking Emma to be his fake date for the wedding and the week coming up to the wedding. But Preston is bad at pretending, and obviously you can sort of read between the lines and guess what happens here. So before I give my rating, first of all, I want to say I've read this entire series, and I believe I talked about both books as well on my channel here, and I loved this series. I love this author. I was so excited to read this one. However, I will say right off the bat, okay, don't hate me, but this is my least favorite book of the series, and I rated it 3 stars and 2 chili peppers. Now again, you can see that I've rated it 3 stars, so that means that it's not bad by any means, but it was my least favorite, and let's talk about it. So first of all, I love Emma the heroine. When she said packing light is not my personality in like chapter 2, I knew we were girlies. I knew we were kindred spirits, and I just thought that was fierce. I do also separately enjoy Preston as well, but I failed to be obsessed with them as a couple. And in this book, she does end up spending a lot of time with his family, and that's probably what like softened his heart a little bit and made him fall for her. But also, like, what else? I want something else. I want something else. Do my eyebrows, something else. Yeah. I sort of failed to realize what was special about her for him to fall so fiercely for her, and him for her to fall so fiercely with him, if you know what I'm saying. Of course you know what I'm saying, because I just said it. Okay, anyways. Also, like, after wedding week is over, it just sort of fast forwards to later on, and I wasn't crazy about that. I would have loved to read about the adjustment period of how everything was now that they actually got home, especially because, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, she breaks up with him right after. I want to tell you the reason that she broke up with him. She read some mean comments and just decided to end it with him abruptly. And while I was reading this, it didn't make sense. Now I understand mean comments obviously affect us all, but number one, they weren't too mean. So I guess something else must have been happening in her head that maybe made her want to break up with him along with these comments. And I would have loved to read about what exactly was happening in her head besides just the comments, you know? And also by the end, she does mention that if she hadn't worked on herself and learned to love herself first, she would have eventually sabotaged their relationship, because you can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself. And I honestly love that notion, and I would have loved to read about that more, and that would have maybe made the breakup make more sense. Overall, this is my least favorite couple in the series. I'm so sorry. I love this author. I really wanted to love this. And again, the book is not bad by any means. It's still a solid book, but just, it didn't give me life like the previous 2 did. Okay, now you can put down your pitchforks and we can move on. The next book that I ended up reading was How to Fake It with a Fae. And listen, okay, I'm a simple girl. I see Fae in the title, I'm gonna read it. But before that, the tropes. So this is a grumpy ex-sunshine fantasy romance, and I rated it 4 stars and 1 chili pepper, but more on that later. First, let me tell you about it. So it's about Addison and Phelan. Addison is a witch and Phelan is the king of the Fae. Now, as a witch, Addison needs to get married, and quickly, if she doesn't want her family's line of magic to disappear. I should mention that as a witch, she of course does have a power, and her power is that she's able to pick the perfect read for you and put you in it. And Phelan obviously is incredibly powerful as well, but he does not want to get married at all. And he was especially not expecting to sort of be attracted to Addison because she's part of the Thornrose family, and that's the family that ruined his life. So the last thing that he wants to do is obviously get married to her, but what he also wasn't expecting, that ancient magic binds them together. And at this point, that hasn't happened in like 100 years, so nobody's really sure how to break the bond. So he suggests that they stay in a fake relationship, a fake engagement. Now this is ideal for her because she doesn't want to go through a whole line of suitors to find a man. She just doesn't want to be in the spotlight at all, so she agrees to this. And obviously, we have learned through many books thus far that if you fake a relationship, soon enough it becomes real. Okay, now let me talk to you about why this was a 4-star read for me. So first of all, I loved the beginning. It was giving very Elle Woods because she thought that she was gonna get proposed to and she actually gets dumped. I also love her as a character in general because she's very witty. Her favorite book is Pride and Prejudice, and you know what? She is me and I am her. I read Pride and Prejudice about once a year at least, so I understand her biblically, okay? I also really enjoy Phelan. I think that he was sassy and like a fun character. And you know what else I enjoyed? The fact that they discovered that to break the spell that binds them, they're gonna have to sleep together. And as soon as I read about that, I was like, that's just delicious. Like, there's nothing else to be said. Immediately when that was set forth, I was like, oh, this is gonna be an enjoyable read for me. One thing about Addie though, it turns out in the book that in order to harness her power, she has to tap into anger and like bad emotions. And I'm just like, okay, she's 29 and she lives with her parents. Like, wouldn't she be angry all the time? Like, wouldn't that be something, you know, that she would just so easily be able to tap into? Or am I just projecting? I don't know. Anyways, moving on, that's not relevant. I want to talk about Xandra, who is Phelan's best girlfriend. And I thought I liked her at first, but then I really quickly decided that no, I in fact don't, because she is a pick-me and she gives off very, oh, I know your man better than you do vibes. And it was just not cute from the beginning. Pretty soon I started resenting her and I start thinking that she was shifty, and I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but I was certainly right. I also like the big twist in this book. It was overall a very good read. There was minimal smut. I feel like there were like 2 scenes and a couple of kisses, but it was an interesting story and it did keep me hooked all the way through. So I'm probably gonna read a book 2, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. My last read of the month is Forbidden King. Now, this is book 3 of a series. It is a complete standalone, however, and I did read it as such. But after reading this one, I'm thinking I might want to go back and read the rest of the series because I actually really liked it. Now, this book is about Sailor and King, and Sailor and King have sort of a history, a hidden history that nobody knows anything about. And the reason why that is because King wants her, but he can't really have her because she's his best friend's little sister. And it's been easy to keep their distance, not really cross any lines because she's been at school, but once she comes back, the lines get blurrier and blurrier, and obviously they slowly, at first, cross the line, but then they end up falling head over heels for each other. This for me was a 4-star read and a 2 chili pepper, maybe like 1.5. I don't really do half, so let's just say 2. And it is a small town, brother's best friend, friends to lovers romance. So one thing I'll say first of all is that I know not a lot of people like friends to lovers, and I prefer enemies to lovers. Obviously, I just told you about Pride and Prejudice, so you already know what's up. Enemies to lovers is completely my bag. However, I have found that when friends to lovers is written correctly, it can be oh so enjoyable. And this one definitely was. I also want to mention that it was pretty funny and witty. It did have some very laugh out loud one-liners. It was a little bit of a slow burn though, but I loved King. I thought that he was a gentleman, very respectful and attentive, so I didn't mind the slow burn moment of it all. I will say that I have read hotter, quote unquote, or I guess spicier best friend's little sister romances, and this one wasn't the spiciest one I've read. However, it certainly did have more depth than other ones I have read, and I really actually appreciate that. But yeah, that's all for today's video. Let me know if you read any of these books, and let me know if your rating is similar or extremely different to mine. I would love to have a discussion. Also, leave some recommendations down below of books that you think I should read. But anyway, if you made it this far, you are a pretty princess. And if you like this video, then please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.